Mexican, it's just a scare tactic by the Republicans to get people to upset. We don't need a wall. Don't want a wall? Can't have a wall. But still, people voted for him because he believed in some wall because the bad Mexican. Listen, I can tell you something. I used to go to Miami every month for my business. Miami was a crap city until the Cuban boat lift. Cubans moved to Miami. They started businesses. They started industry. When you go to Miami, you may see signs that are in Spanish. That may piss you off. But if you look around Miami, it's a vibrant, growing city now. It's clean. It's got businesses. The deco the back. The Miami Beach is back. That's what the foreigners do to our cities, which we didn't do. Listen, we don't let criminals in, and there's vetting that goes back 2.5 years. That's another lie. The Republicans, if nothing else, send me there to just explain to people what a lie is, because it's all over the Republican Party now. You think I'm passionate or angry? Unless well, he's angry. Yeah, I'm angry because I've been putting up with it for 40 years. So just stop the lies. Immigration, go back to the way it was. DACA, make them a pathway to citizenship. Give them a pathway to citizenship.
It amazes me that Indiana wants to talk about building a $100 million prison up north near Hobart to round up and house undocumented aliens. And for $10 million, we could literally document every alien, not only in the state of Indiana, but the Midwest. DACA students are Americans. Immigrants who come here to be Americans. Ronald Reagan, of all people, had it right. He said, you can never move to China and become Chinese. You cannot move to France and become French, but anyone can come to the United States and be an American. My family immigrated. I have a brother who served in Vietnam, a volunteer. He's concerned today at 65 because his green card has expired. He has been here since he was 7 years old. He raised his weapon and he fulfilled the oath he swore. And this is what we've come to. We have had immigrants undocumented in every wave of immigration since our founding fathers. And this is the first time in our history we have criminalized a race of people. We are in the throes of a moral crisis. We should be documenting not just the kids in the DACA programs, their parents, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles. It's better to document them than it is to leave them undocumented. Undocumented immigrants are exploited. Thank you.
Keep talking about DACA. What is DACA? Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So these people were children when they came here. This is the only country they have ever known. Now, so many people, some of them have been here 30 years, easily 30 years. They're probably around my age. And a lot of people will say, certain on a different party will say, well, they've been here for 30 years. Why didn't they get themselves legal? There is no procedure for them to get legal. They would have to go back to some country that has never been home for them to file paperwork to come back to the only country that has ever been home for them. We need to streamline the process. We need to make a process for them to get legal, first of all. We should not be punishing the children for the sins of the father, and that's basically what they're doing when they're targeting these DACA recipients.
You know, I've made this issue just a little bit of a discussion point in some of my listening tour events. You know, as I indicated, we've had 12 what I call town hall listening events throughout the district, and you have to realize that, you know, all of us, we're just one of 100 or 820,000 voters that live in this district. And you know, I spent a little bit of time talking to people, and from that kind of developed what they believe, what this district believes are some solutions. Everyone that I talked to does support pathway to citizenship for those DACA eligible. They also had indicated that as far as the future is concerned, that they would like us to move to a skill-based approach as far as our immigration policy is concerned. There also was some discussion that they would like to see the curb the future-based family emissions to be just spouse and children under 18. But the one thing that I found interesting more than anything when asking these folks is that what they really like to see is us work towards global peace, ending wars and strifes and human rights violations around the world, because most of the time people are trying to seek asylum from a country where those problems are taking place. I mean, if elected, I can assure you this, my friends, that I will work with other members of Congress, and I will work with the President and the Secretary of State or whoever to try to bring peace across this globe.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different tangent here, not in respects to DACA, because I think we can all agree that the DACA students and the DACA recipients really do need a path to citizenship. The process for doing that is simply by increasing our quota of people that we allow to apply for citizenship by, say, 200,000 a year, which is a fraction of a percent of our population, and allow that 200,000 DACA recipients to apply for citizenship, and that begins their process to go through the citizenship, and every single one of them will get a chance. The second piece, they'll say that the chain migration actually is for spouses and children unmarried children under 18. So that actually does exist. But here's another item that is vitally important. One of the things that we can do in Congress, and this is immediately, is to move to separate the suspension of due process from the defense spending bill. Because right now those two are married together, and you're either going to you're going to either vote against the defense spending bill or vote against the suspension of due process. Because right now our immigrants are not given due process. Your right to a speedy trial, your right to go before a judge, your right to say, hey, I have, here's my side of the case. That's not afforded an immigrant. And just recently, like in the last 30 days, judges have said that is not afforded to legal green card holders either. People who are in this country who are working towards their citizenship, we no longer give them due process. This is a frightening process. We can immediately move to separate that to reduce the tensions of our immigrants. Thank you.
The U.S. Customs and Border Protection declared Friday that construction of the border wall is underway, describing replacement fencing, including a 2-mile strip on the border of California. Is the border wall feasible, and what are the implications of building one? Let's go ahead and start with the spec.
It's the biggest boondoggle I have seen for a while. Building a wall, and I think everybody in this room actually understands, building a wall across an extensive border, huge wall, beautiful wall. It doesn't cover the natural barriers. It doesn't stop planes. It actually isn't going to prevent the immigration across it. What is happening, immigration illegal crossings have reduced in the last 10 years. We're now putting up and spending a massive amount of money for a reducing problem. This doesn't make a lot of sense. I would much rather feed veterans. I would much rather reduce homelessness. I would much rather reduce the opioid crisis. I would much rather feed people, build jobs, than spend that money on a border wall. So no, not a fan.
Oh, certainly. I concur with Toby across the board. I don't think it's a waste of money. We're $21 trillion in debt right now. We can go down the list of all the other needs that exist out there. And where can we more effectively spend our money as a nation there? But you have to realize this, though, my friends, that those kind of ideas, those kind of big discussions, those kind of song and dance routines effectively move the electorate. And so until we can come up with big ideas and a desire to try to change it, we're going to be falling victim to the same boondoggle, the same story over and over again. So as I keep saying, get to the polls, talk to your friends, talk to your family, and make your dreams tomorrow policy today.
They say those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. It's a Maginot Line. I'm sure we're all familiar with that term from World War I in France. The Maginot Line. It was, well, let's build this wall, let's build this great barricade, and the Germans still got around it. There are actually parts of the wall that has been built back when Bush pushed for it, that there are American citizens that are outside the wall, and they have to travel 30, 40, 50 miles in order to get to their next door neighbor, because they have to go around the wall to get to a point where there's a specialized crossing. It's idiotic. It's not going to work. It's stupid. Let's be honest, it's stupid. Let's not waste money on it. Let's not.
You know, Congress had allocated some years ago money to replace fencing and to repair some of the issues along the border. And this week, the president was quite livid last week because Congress didn't fund his wall. And I tend to ponder whether that announcement was made to appease a 10-year-old in the White House. So now we can run around and say we're building our wall while Congress is saying, no, we're not funding the wall. The wall's not going to be built. Rational people don't want it. Texans don't want it. People in Arizona, New Mexico, they don't want it. They don't want it. That border has been fluid for hundreds of years. There are people on both sides of this border who are families. They're all not Mexican. They're all not Anglo, but they're there. And they have been tied to that land for hundreds of years. And it is ridiculous. We build a wall in Mexico. We build a wall with Canada. The insanity here is mind-boggling. I do believe that we live in a dangerous world. I believe there are things that we must do. But I do believe that that announcement was meant to appease the President of the United States and no one else.
That wall got Donald Trump elected. So there is a lot of people out there, 63 million people. 63 million people voted for him, and that was the main reason, if you ask anyone, build that wall. So you can't really say it's not going to be built because, God, we said Trump would never be elected. But here's, we had a forum at a high school in Fortville, and afterwards the paper did a thing and they said, Roger Day seemed to be hostile to Donald Trump. I was the only one that made that clear. Let me read you something. Democrats are debating how likable the nominee will need to be ahead of the 2020 election, presidential race. They predict it will be the most negative and bruising political campaign in history. Some say finding a fighter to take on President Trump will be more important than finding the proverbial candidate one wants to get a beer with. Remember to get a beer with George W. Bush? Some people in this panel probably voted for George W. Bush. If you go back 4 elections. So that's what I'm going to do to stop the wall. I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen because we got to win the 4th district. And I can win the 4th district because I can play the Republican game. But you have to win first and then take the House back in the blue wave. You can be part of the blue wave or you can be part of the red tide.
So in efforts to get the 4th district back, if elected, which foreign affairs troubles you the most? Is it the UN, war in Afghanistan, Syria, or the Russian interference? We'll start with you.
All of them? We can solve every one of those problems by winning this seat, which is not even expected to be a toss-up or leaning red, it's red. We could win this district with someone that's exciting and can get the progressive people, someone's a true progressive, even though he may be 62 years old. We've got to win this. The biggest thing right now, I believe, is Russia. North Korea is important, but we can solve that problem with diplomacy. Russia's a big problem. They've been in our elections, and yet we do nothing about it. We've let him murder people in the United States. We've let him murder people in Europe. We've let him murder people in England. Yet we still don't say a single bad word. So right now, he wishes he was